What's up, guys? We're here with the Week 10 performance reviews. First matchup I have here is mine versus Ray. I lost this one 103 to 81. We'll look at my team. I had Drew Brees with 14, Brandon Cooks with 10, Jimmy Graham with 18, and the Panthers kicker with 10. Nothing really going on my bench here. And I did have some duds in the lineup. McKinnon only got 6. I expect a little bit more there. Devonta Freeman only got me 0.3. A lot of that had to do with him getting a concussion on the first possession of the game. Bilal Powell 2. What makes my matchup with Ray kind of funny is I have Freeman. He had Coleman. So as soon as Freeman got hurt, that boosted his running back's value. And then once Matt Forte got ruled that he was going to be out for the game, Ray does have Forte, so he went and picked up Elijah McGuire because I have Powell, and then McGuire outperformed Powell. So it's just kind of how the week went for me. If we look over here at Ray's team, he had Jared Goff at 27. Coleman had 15. Evan Ingram had 12. Amir Abdullah had 12. Lions defense with 11. Not much going on his bench this week. And, really maybe the only duds in his lineup were Will Fuller with 2.5 points. I believe he left the game with injury, though. And the Buffalo kicker got him 4. So the next matchup we have here is Philip versus Ray Sr. Philip won this one 125 to 90. And we'll start here by looking at Ray Sr.'s team. He had Tom Brady with 23. Golden Tate had 19. Duke Johnson with 12. Not much else going on. He had Deshaun Jackson on the bench, who had 11 points. It's kind of the only bench performer he had do anything special. Maybe some duds in his lineup. Jordan Howard with 5. You might expect a little bit more there. Mohamed Sanu with 4. Marvin Jones with 3. Cameron Brate with basically 2. You expect a little bit more out of some of those guys there. And then if we look over here at Phillips' team, he had Josh McCown with 13. Todd Gurley with 17. AJ Green with 20. Devonta Adams with 18. Sterling Shepard with 20. Isaiah Crowell with 16. Kai Forbath with 10. Had Saints defense on his bench who had 10, so could have got some more points there if he would have played them over the Vikings. So he's currently rostering 2 pretty decent defenses. Also had Jameson Crowder on the bench who had 10. A couple duds in his lineup, I would say. Vikings defense with 1 point. You expect a little bit more there, and Fournette with 6. But everybody else, pretty much performed fairly well for him this week. Next up, we have probably the biggest blowout we'll have of the season, and probably a little bit unexpected given the two teams only have a combined 6 wins. But we have Michael versus Joseph here. Michael won this one 166 to 61. We'll start by looking at Joseph's team. He had Jarvis Landry with 13. Alan Hearns with 11. Matt Bryant had 11. Did have Montgomery on the bench who had 14. Not much else going on there. Duds in his lineup. Taylor with 3. Maybe Doug Martin with 5, depending on how you feel about him. Terrence Williams with just over 1. Charles Clay with 2. Rob Kelly with basically 2. I know Kelly and Hearns did get hurt in their games, so that probably hurt some of the value there. If we look over here at Michael's team, obviously, basically his whole team killed it this week, given 166 points. We have Cam Newton with 36, Mixon with 11, Darkwa with 12, Sanders with 17, Thielen with 27, DeMarco Murray with 27, Seahawks defense with 11. Nothing really going on in his bench there. And like I said, nobody in his lineup I would have considered a dud this week. Everybody performed pretty solid for him. And normally that's what it takes to get that kind of score there. Next up, we have David versus Dakota. David was able to get the win here, 103 to 98. So this was our closest matchup of the week here. Unfortunately, the computer I use to look up the scores is a little slower than my normal one. So it just takes a little bit to process things here. Alright, here we go. So we'll look at Dakota's team here. He had Eli Manning with 17, Le'Veon Bell with 14, Michael Thomas with 16, Fitzgerald with 16, Gostkowski with 11. Did have Dion Lewis on the bench, who had 18. Some duds in his lineup. Jack Doyle with 2, Jordy Nelson with 4. Unfortunately, with his quarterback situation, not really sure if that's going to improve at all. Maybe Dez with 6. You may consider that a dud. Morris with 5. As a Cowboys fan, I definitely expected to get a little bit more out of him, but we were down in that game because our defense was struggling and couldn't block anybody. So shit happens. Looking over here at David's team, he had Dak with 13. Mark Ingram with 31. Demaryius Thomas with 13. Ed Dixon with 11. Washington kicker Nick Rose with 14. Had Watkins on the bench, who had 11, and Phillip Rivers, who had 15. So could have got a few more points there if you would have thrown him in the lineup. Also had Titans defense, who had 5. Duds in his lineup. Texans defense got him -1. Tyler Lockett with 2. T.Y. Hilton with 3. And that's about it. Everybody else did fairly decent. Obviously if they get some touchdowns, their scores increase pretty substantially. Next up, we have Garrett versus Dalton. This is another big blowout this week. Dalton won this one 173 to 99. Not sure what the highest point total is on the season, but I'm sure that 173 is fairly close to it. We'll look here at Dalton's team. He had Mariota with 18 points, Carlos Hyde with 11, Kamara with 22, Hopkins with 15, Diggs with 16, Robert Woods with 33, Smith-Schuster with 18, Patriots defense with 13, Greg the Leg Zuerlein with 17. On his bench, he had Parker, who had 10, Safarian Jenkins, who had 10, Kenyon Drake, who had 16. He only had one player in his starting lineup that didn't score double digits, and that was Gronk, who had 9.4. So, huge week for him. I always believe, I don't want all my guys to go off one week, so I'm like, look, you're only going to get so many good games out of them. Let's try to space it out so I can win more games, because my guess is his team will probably shit the bed this week and put up less than 100 points, and he'll lose. So I'm not sure who he's playing or how his players' matchups are looking like, but we'll see how the next week goes for him. If you look over here at Garrett's team, he had Russell Wilson with 19, McCaffrey had 19, Funchess had 24, Vernon Davis with 11, and that's about it. He had Stafford on the bench, who had 22, so he could have got a couple more points there, but not a big deal there. Duds in his lineup. Bears defense only got 3 points. I expected more there. Cohen with 2. Cole Beasley with 3. And I would say Melvin Gordon with about 7 points. Expect a little bit more there. He did have a very tough matchup versus the Jaguars, though, so kind of hard to expect too much out of him there. Then the last matchup we have here is Phil versus George. Phil pulled this one out 112 to 77. We'll start by looking at Phil's team here. He had Roethlisberger with 18, Marquise Lee with 17, Robbie Anderson with 17, Latavius Murray with 13. Rams defense got him 16. Had Andy Dalton on the bench, who had 15, but he played the right quarterback there, and everybody else was on bye or hurt on his bench there. Some duds in his lineup. Peterson with 3. That's really it. Everybody else, pretty much performed. Maybe if you expect more out of Antonio Brown, given he had an easy matchup, he only put up 6 points. You'd expect double digits against the Colts, but just wasn't his day. If you look over here at Georgia's team, Matt Ryan with 15, Baldwin with 12, Austin Hooper with 14, Theo Riddick with 12. Had Stewart on the bench who had 11, and Blake Bortles on the bench who had 16, so he could have got a couple more points out of the quarterback and could have basically got all 11 points out of the running back, because if we look at his duds here, Ted Ginn with a point, Chris Ivory had .1, so he could have got 10.9 more points throwing Stewart in there. It's kind of hard to, Stewart sucked last week, but I think he's a better option than Ivory, and he did have a good matchup, and he is still the starting running back in Carolina, despite basically what I would consider a timeshare with McCaffrey there. But that's how it goes there. So I will have power rankings up for you guys on the league page. Waivers will process tomorrow at noon, so make sure you get your waiver claims in before that time. Right now, playoff picture is pretty tight. We have a three-way tie for first between myself, Garrett, and Dalton. And then right below us, we have Dakota and Phil at 6-4. And then Ray and Philip right behind that at 5-5. And then we have David at 4-6. And then we have Joseph and Ray Sr. at 3-6-1. And then Michael and George at 3-7. So it's tough to think that the teams that have 3 wins could possibly make the playoffs, but I don't really know who's playing who the next few weeks. It'd be very difficult for them to make it, but everybody else has a decent shot. I mean, 6 of us are making it, so best of luck to everybody, and see you guys next week.